All right, panel to panel, part 3. So we're in the third and final part of class number 4. Um, so Wally Wood's 22 panels always work. Big fan. I would suggest you use it. Um, Wally has some great ideas here, but what I want you to look at is the um, relationship between panels in these examples. So if we look here, a nice simple example of storytelling using images, no words. Um, Character gets in the car, closes the door, waits, starts the car. Now, that's actually very natural. Most people don't get in the car, slam the door, jump in, and start the car. Adding these two panels, it slows the pacing down, but it also makes it more natural, right? So knowing when to have silent panels can really help your pacing, can really help you transition to transition between panels. Okay? Bill Watterson did the brilliant Calvin and Hobbes. I don't usually like to reference comic strips when talking about comic books and graphic novels because they're not the same. But Watterson was a genius, still is a genius, I would assume. Calvin and Hobbes, great example of what can be the pinnacle of comic art. You see the way this is laid out. Good night, Hobbes. Good night. And they're both happy and excited. They're camping. They're outside. They're having a great time. Next panel, silent. So we have no words here. We get, as a reader, a second to just sit with these two characters. And then one asks, do you believe in ghosts? No reaction. We just see them as the sun comes up, sitting outside, terrified. It's a great example of silent panels. We have two silent panels, dialogue perfectly chosen, and it's a nice slow build. So it's the pacing that makes this funny. Picture if this had been done by a lesser artist. He would have had two frightened characters sitting in a tent saying, do you believe in ghosts? And then they just sit outside as the sun rises. Not as funny as this one. This builds so much better. And silent panels can really help that. This example here by David Mazzucchelli, really brilliantly done, very film noirish, beautiful use of color, great use of shadow and light. Got a lot of dialogue. J. Jonah Jameson is basically laying into Ben Urich, and one of the things that's great about this piece, and I think this is from Daredevil Born Again, which was written by Frank Miller. Jameson's often portrayed as a kind of cartoonish buffoon in the Spider-Man strips. He was done as he's basically a antagonist for Peter Parker. Not necessarily a villain, but he kind of skirts the edge of it. For the first time in probably the history of the character, Jameson comes across like an actual newspaperman. As he's berating Urich for something that he did, where he's refusing to write a story that he knows the details about because he was roughed up by a couple of bad guys. Jameson's waving the paper at him, and he's saying, this is 5 million readers worth of power. It can depose mayors, it can destroy presidents. And that, it's powerful. It's done really well, the way he lays out this panel. But look at the relationship. So we start with an exterior shot of the Daily Bugle. That's what we call an establishing shot. We go to an interior shot of the two characters. Look at the body language. Jameson is aggressive. Urich is in the less dominant position. He's in a submissive pose. We see Jameson intense. We see Urich. He can't look at him. He's ashamed. And this silent panel, that's him reacting to what Jameson said here. So the silent panel really works. Again, it adds to the pacing. It sets the mood. It does a lot. Jameson says, you're lucky I don't fire you. Now get out of my office. And as Ben leaves Jameson's office, we have a stark contrast in the coloring. So we've gone from this moody sunset, dark office to the bright exterior of the paper, and the voice off screen. That's a good boy, Urich, and the janitor, who's obviously working for these gangsters that roughed up Urich, is basically reiterating that, hey, we were right here watching you while you were getting ready to sell us out again. So good job that you didn't. Really nicely done. Very film noirish, but the way the panels relate to each other, exterior, interior, close-up, medium shot, nice body language, Uric, sad, leaving, reacting to the janitor. Nicely laid out. And these all relate to each other, paced really well. They carry this, this sequence really brilliantly. Here's Tim again. This is a really complex action scene, and it's done extremely well. All same size panels, all long, narrow, and color scheme, everything's the same except for the next to the last panel, which is red, and that's so that it'll stand out a little bit more. You have Cap jumping down a well, trying to save a toddler who's fallen down, grabs her by wedging his shield into the wall, reaches down, shield gives out, they both start falling, and Cap is grabbed by somebody else. We'll see in the reveal, or you would see if you're reading the story. But it's nicely done. Good mix of shots here. Pretty much straightforward, but we've got different angles. So from below, from the side, close up. A lot of Wally Wood's suggested panel layouts in this one, so you can see those put to use. So really exceptionally well done page. The narrow panels create a sense of heightened tension, so that's a nice effect. This is probably the most complex action scene in the history of comics in terms of the action going on. And what's happening here is Barbara Gordon is in the middle of a store, Christmas time, crazy shoppers, and the crowd's in a panic. You can see the crowd's all running in one direction, and they're so panic-stricken, they're not noticing that she's changing into her Batgirl costume. Right in the middle of the crowd, and then she runs towards whatever they're all running away from. But when you look at this, it's really, really busy. It could have been totally unclear, and I think if you had used something like this, where we varied the shots, I don't think it would have come across as well. So in this case, using a simple sort of stationary camera, letting the actor perform the actions that they need to, so she changes from her civilian garb to her superhero costume, essentially in the same place in each panel, and then the crowd is what moves. The crowd is what reacts. I think that keeps it a lot clearer. Also tremendous opportunity in something like this to throw your friends and real people into the crowd scene. But extremely well done. Right? And again, an example of the moment-to-moment use of a storytelling between panels. So, what's your assignment? Well, your assignment is you're going to create one of these. You're going to do 6 panels, and you're going to show moment-to-moment transitions, something that happened to you. It can be fictional, it can be real. It's completely up to you, but you're going to show moment-to-moment transitions between the panel. That's the most basic of all of these, but it's also the most important, because showing moment-to-moment is a key to being able to tell a story visually in comics and graphic novels. All right? We'll talk more during the live session. Hope this was helpful. Thanks.